Welcome to Authors Allies, the podcast where we dive into the worlds of authors, books, and the art of storytelling. Join us for in-depth interviews with celebrated authors, insightful book reviews, and practical tips on marketing your literary masterpiece. After over 20 years of publishing magazines, I, your host, Rebecca Pechoric, am so thrilled to be able to work within my dream of promoting authors and their books. Whether you're a seasoned writer or just starting your journey, we've got something for you. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's explore the fascinating world of books together. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Authors Allies podcast. I am so glad you're here. Before we dive in today, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really sit with it for a second. When you picture your book launch, what do you see? Is it a flurry of social media posts, maybe a countdown, a launch day graphic with your cover on it with some sparkles and maybe a buy now link? Maybe you're exhausted at your desk, hitting refresh on that Amazon dashboard, right? At 11 p.m., wondering, oh my gosh, did I do enough? If that image feels familiar, if that's what launch day looks like in your mind, then this episode is for you. Because somewhere along the way, someone convinced us that a book launch is a moment in time, a sprint, a short, intense burst of energy that determines whether your book lives or dies out in the world, right? And I am here as your fellow marketing person to tell you that that is one of the most damaging myths in the author world. Your book launch is not just a moment in time. It is a long game storyline. It is a marathon, not just a sprint. Okay. And today we're going to pull that apart. We're going to look at how launches work, why the do everything in one frantic week approach burns authors out and leaves books behind, and what a sustainable launch strategy actually looks like. Calling this one, Your Book Isn't Late, It's Just Getting Started. Grab your coffee, friends. Get cozy. Let's go. Okay. So here is the problem. Let's name the pattern first, because I think when we look at it, it's really absurd how it actually is. What happens a lot of times is an author spends months and sometimes years writing, editing, revising, and polishing their book. And then all of a sudden, they panic. They try to cram every marketing strategy they've ever heard of into a 2-week window. They post every day. They email their list. They do a giveaway. They ask their friends to share. They're texting everyone they know. They run an ad maybe, and they do a podcast interview if they're lucky. And then launch day comes. And then launch day goes. And a week later, they are totally spent. They're emotionally drained, creatively empty. They're probably passed out on the couch because they made themselves sick because they were doing so much. And then they are in a panic. They're wondering if they did enough. They're wondering if they missed the window. Does this sound familiar? Because I tell you what, this is what so many authors are trying to do when they reach out to me. You guys, here's what I want you to hear. You didn't do it wrong if that's the way you did it. Your framework was wrong. And burnout is real. During launches, author burnout happens because launching is so hard. They were taught that it's supposed to be this short, quick, compress everything, months of visibility into 10 frantic days. And when that adrenaline crash hits, and the launch didn't fail. Momentum was never meant to be achieved in a week. What happens with your launch is the same thing that should be happening all the time in your author marketing strategy. It should build in waves. Let me offer you a completely different way to think about this. Your book is not an event. It's a system, right? And systems don't run on bursts of energy. They run on rhythm. Think about it like this. Most authors treat a launch like a spotlight, like this bright, intense, short-lived, and then gone event. But a sustainable launch behaves more like a garden. You don't plant the seeds the week before the harvest, water it once, and expect to get all these tomatoes. And you certainly don't water it once, do all those things, and then go, grow, 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 for 7 straight days and hope for magic. I want you to think about a different word. Instead of launching your book, I want you to think about circulating your book, because a book that is actively circulating in your world, in your content, your conversations, in your community is doing 5 jobs at once. If you are circulating your book and working on that visibility of you as the brand, you are attracting new readers. You're building your authority. You're supporting your offers. You're feeding your content strategy. And fifth, you're reinforcing your brand story all around. That's not a campaign. That's an infrastructure. And your book isn't a product that you release and then retreat from and just expect to build it and they will come. It's a living asset in your business ecosystem. And like any asset, it needs to be tended to and not just launched. So we like to think of this in 3 layers of a sustainable launch. Okay. If it's not just the big week, what does it look like? I want to walk you through these things because each layer has its own purpose, energy, and its mistakes. So, layer 1 is the pre launch. This is the season before your book comes out, and it's where most authors are dramatically underplaying their power. Pre launch is not about hype, it's about the habits that you're building into your marketing eco structure. Okay. So you're building this system that your book is going to land in. So basically, you are growing and warming your audience. You're sharing your story behind the story, what inspired you, what you learned, what surprised you. You're positioning yourself so they feel like insiders and not just buyers that are just going to be giving you money. This space doesn't have to have a hard start date. It's ongoing, right? It's the content you're creating now, the conversations you've been having, the seeds that you're planting. Here's the mistake, though. The authors that I work with, many of them have skipped this phase entirely. They write their book in private. They say nothing. And then on launch day, they're essentially a stranger asking strangers to buy their book. Don't be a stranger to your audience before you ask them to show up for you. You don't just meet a new friend and go, hey, I've never met you before, but let's get married. Hey, I've never met you before. Come on over to my house. Let's hang out. No, this is not the way that it works. You need to get to know your readers before you are asking them for something. Okay. Now let's talk about layer 2, the launch window, like the ignition phase, right? This part matters. I'm not saying it doesn't. This is the season where you are inviting attention directly and unapologetically. You're making clear, consistent asks. You're showing up with energy and intention, and you are rallying your community to help you out. But here's the key word, ignition. You're lighting the spark here. You're not supposed to be the entire forest fire because you've already gotten things going, right? The launch window is where you're going to activate that ecosystem that you've been building for the last several months, maybe the last year even, which means if you've done the pre-launch work, this phase is going to feel more energizing instead of desperate. No one wants to buy from desperate. And here's something important. The launch window does not have to be just 1 week. It can be a month or an entire season. You get to decide how long this ignition phase lasts. The less stress you want to encounter, the longer you want this season to last. Trust me on this one. Ask me how I know. So then we get to layer 3, which is the post-launch, the expansion era. This is the phase where most authors just kind of disappear because they think, okay, did the work, wrote the book, launched my book, now I'm done, here we go. But this is where the real opportunity is going to live. The moment your book is published, it becomes searchable, quotable, referenceable, and reusable. It's now a content machine if you choose to use it that way. So in this post-launch phase, what you're going to do is you're going to work on repurposing your chapters into blog posts, social media content, email newsletters, right? You're going to turn your readers' reactions and testimonials into posts. This is when you have an even bigger opportunity to pitch to podcasts and media using your book itself as the credentials, giving you the authority to talk about it. This is where you're going to start building the evergreen funnels that are going to drive people to your book continuously over and over again. So you're going to consider running seasonal sort of mini launch cycles around the holidays or a relevant awareness month or even around certain themes in the news. Your book just doesn't expire after launch week, right? This is when it kind of matures. It becomes like the fine wine or the good cheese, right? I want you to think of a film that comes out in theaters, and then later the film becomes streaming on Netflix and such, right? And then eventually it may get referenced in articles. It could even become a cult classic. The release date is just the beginning of the distribution story. Your book can have that same type of arc if you let it. Let's talk about segment 4, which is the mindset shift. I want to give you one specific practical reframe that I think can genuinely change how you relate to your book from this day forward. Many authors ask themselves, am I in launch mode? And this question creates a binary. You're either launching or you're not, which means you're either exhausted or you're doing nothing. What if you replace that question with, how is my book showing up in my business this month? You're an entrepreneur. I hate to break it to you. If you're an author, there's another podcast episode that you can listen to about this, and I will drop it in the notes. But if you're an author, you're an entrepreneur. So you want to ask, how is my book showing up in my business this month? This is an open question. It's ongoing. It assumes your book has a role to play and not just a deadline to hit. Maybe it's showing up through a guest article you wrote. Maybe your book is showing up because someone tagged you in a post, or it's in a welcome sequence for your new email subscribers. Maybe it's the reason someone booked a call with you, okay? Your book can be working even when you're not actively launching. And here's the reframe I want to leave with you. Instead of saying, I launched my book in June, try thinking, I am currently in the first cycle of my book's visibility strategy. Yeah, that's a little long. Okay. So instead of saying, I launched my book in June, try saying something along the lines of, hey, I launched my book last year and now I'm doing this with it. Because let's face it, there are more seasons with your book than just launching it. You're going to have seasonal pushes, holiday tie-ins, a new podcast tour maybe, content repurposing wave. There are all sorts of evergreen discoveries that can be made from search and SEO. And let's not forget that AI might be out there searching for your book as well now. Your book's just not a one-time announcement. This is a recurring invitation, and it's just an ongoing thing. So here's where I want you to land with all of this today. If you've ever walked away from your launch feeling like it was too quiet or it didn't last long enough, I want you to hear this very clearly. That is almost certainly not a failure of your effort. It's a mismatch of your expectations. Books are not rocket ships. You don't light them and watch them disappear into orbit. They're more like a lantern. You don't light a lantern once and walk away. You keep it glowing. You carry it with you. You let it light the way for you and for every reader who hasn't found you yet. That's the real work of a book launch. And honestly, it's much more sustainable and it's so much more meaningful than just a 7-day sprint could ever be. Your book's not late. It's not forgotten. It's just getting started. If today's episode landed for you, here's your homework if you want to do it. Write down this question somewhere where you're going to see it. How is my book showing up in my business this month? Answer it honestly. Then find one small thing you can do this week to help it show up a little more. That's it. Just one thing. That's how waves are built, just one ripple at a time. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I really missed you guys while I took my break. And it just means the world to me that you are back and here listening. If this shifted something for you, share it with a fellow author who needs to hear it. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Until then, keep writing, keep showing up, and keep that lantern lit. See you next time. That's all for this episode of Authors Allies. We hope you enjoyed our exploration of the literary world. Be sure to stay tuned for our next episode where we'll have more fascinating interviews, book reviews, and marketing tips. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Leave us a review and share us with a friend. To get your free copy of our ebook, 10 Steps to Your Ultimate Book Marketing Plan, be sure to head over to our show notes. Until next time, happy reading and writing.